HumanX Ventures presents Inside the Coaching Mind. Terry Pettit coached the University of Nebraska's first national championship team in 1995 and put the state of Nebraska on a path to volleyball greatness. Now, Terry mentors coaches, writes books, and gives talks about leadership and team building to corporate and business audiences. Here's Coach Pettit to take us inside the coaching mind.
Thank you, David. And before we get to two left-handed legends for Nebraska volleyball, I want to thank HumanX Ventures, an organization that recruits, develops, and mentors extraordinary coaches. Our guests today, Nancy Meendering, Metcalf, and Lisa Reitsma Rautenberg, have many things in common, and they have several things not in common. Both came from Orange County, Iowa. Both went to high school at Hull Western Christian, played for Tom Vandenbosch, won state championships, I believe, in multiple sports. Both are left-handed. Both became three-time All-Americans at Nebraska. I don't know what the actuarial odds are on this, but I firmly believe Nebraska volleyball isn't where it is today if we hadn't been able to entice these two women to come to Nebraska. Ladies, welcome to Inside the Coaching Mind. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Coach, to be here.
Lisa, I don't know that I shared this story with you. Maybe I did, but we really came upon you by accident. There was a recruiting agency that in Chicago, and I just hadn't been able to find a player I wanted, which was tall, left-handed, great arm speed. And I called him and said, "Who's out there that could fit this?" And he says, "I've never seen this woman in Western Iowa, but people tell me she's great." We sent Kathy Noth, and I believe she watched you in a basketball game. I think the volleyball season may have been over. And she comes back, says, "Coach, she's great. She moves, she's athletic." And so we made the effort to recruit you. And then I think that made it a lot easier for us to have an inside track on Nancy because of your success there. How challenging was it, Lisa, for you? Most of the kids that came out of Western Christian went to a local or nearby college that had great success, maybe at the NAIA level. How challenging was that for you to make that decision?
It was actually a pretty tough decision. Yeah, like you said, all our friends went there to Dordt College. It's a Christian college. So I had to really think, and I was talking with my parents about this because I think you came to the All-Star volleyball game and you kind of basically had offered me a scholarship. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure I told you, well, I have to think about it. And we were walking out of there and we're like, who has ever told Coach Pettit that before? Like, who does that? Like, but it was a serious decision for me because, it meant a lot. And obviously, your future. But in the end, I just decided this was something that I really wanted to try. And it was a good fit. I felt like it was a good fit. That family atmosphere overall with the girls that were there. And I just enjoyed my visits. So that was the decision I ended up making.
And Nancy, at what point did you see this as Nebraska as a real option for you?
Completely off her radar. I was just a little freshman running around. I had no idea what I was doing on the volleyball court. I was really strong, but I had zero finesse. I had zero skill level. And so I had to be taught a lot. But I idolized Lisa because she was the starter on the varsity. And we would go watch those games after our team got finished playing. And I would watch her play and I wanted to be like her. But like she said, a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people from our school ended up at one of the smaller colleges right in the area. And so when I saw her go on to Nebraska and have success, that really opened up my eyes to this is a possibility. This could actually be something that might happen and could be possible for me to do as well. And that kind of gave me the hope of doing something different as well.
Let me read you a list of ladies that made similar decisions from Iowa that had it. Sharon Kramer, middle blocker from Clinton High School. I went to see her play basketball. She averaged 45 points a game. This is back when they played three on three. Started for 4 years as at Nebraska as a middle blocker. Kathy Noth from Bettendorf, Iowa. You know her as your assistant coach at Nebraska. I think a lot of people think of Nebraska volleyball. They think of Kathy. She went on, played for the national team. Kayla Banworth, Dubuque Wallard, two-time Olympian at Libero. Maddie Kubik, I think she was National High School Player of the Year, West Des Moines Valley. Jen McFadden, Dubuque Wallard, played on our first championship team. I'm not sure anybody had as much presence at the net as Jen McFadden. Jill McWilliams was a great hitter in high school, was a setter for the Huskers, was a defensive specialist for the 2000 and team captain for the 2000 national championship team. Lisa Reitsma, Hull Western Christian, Nancy Meendering, Hull Western Christian. Where would we be without these people?
Yeah, they've done a lot for the program, that's for sure.
And
I'm kind of thinking about that, but I feel like the Midwest in general, there's quite a few from the Midwest over the years, which is, kind of how we still have those Midwest values, I think, too. So that means a lot to the program as well.
I think you're right. And I used to say that in Iowa, Minnesota, Kansas, Nebraska, we didn't really have to worry about anybody's work ethic. Most players came in and they were ready to go. What was the biggest adjustment for you, Nancy, when you came in?
For me, I think it was just getting used to the game being at such a high level constantly and trying to find a place where I felt like I belonged on the team. I've told people before, I thought after my freshman year, I thought you were going to sit me down and say, you know what? I think we made a mistake. You might want to go somewhere else, because I just felt like I couldn't figure out where I fit. But finding that was really hard for me, and just finding kind of how to figure out the rhythm of the challenges and the demands of being a student athlete in college compared to in high school. Academics hasn't ever been a huge struggle for me, but when you get to college, your time becomes a lot more cramped because you've got so many more commitments with the athletic side of it as well. And so I think that was probably the biggest challenge for me coming in.
Yeah. Well, and some of those things I would never have guessed, because, you seem very comfortable in practice. You may not have thought so, but I thought you were.
I think I'm pretty good at making it.
Well, Lisa writes, well, we didn't redshirt you. We could have. Kelly Aspergen was an All-American right side player, but I felt that 1995 team was going to be special, and that you needed to be an active player to play at the level that I hoped you could play at your sophomore year. And then I was also hopeful that having Nancy watch you play when she was a freshman, and both of you stepped into those roles right away. You became just dominant players. Fiona Nepo and I had a conversation this morning, and she says, without a doubt, my two favorite players to set were Nancy Metcalf and Lisa Reitsma. And I said, why was that? And she says, because they could do anything. They could hit on the left, they could hit in the middle, they could hit on the right. It allowed me to be very creative. Were either of you aware that was somewhat unusual for a player to be doing all the things you were doing?
I didn't really think about it at the time. It's kind of funny. You had mentioned that earlier in the week, and I was rewatching. I haven't watched, any of the video for a long time. I was watching it, and I didn't realize that I played so much middle. Like, I don't remember that. That's funny because I know how hard middle is. Like, that's a hard position. My daughter's playing that now, and I'm like, it's a really hard position. I'm like, I don't even remember doing it, but I did it quite a bit, I guess.
Well,
But yeah,
you understand the reason why we did it. When both of you played, the game was much more limited in terms of rules. A player could only enter a match 3 times. And we wanted to get Maria Hedbeck on the court 3 times, who was our best defensive player, would have been a tremendous libero if the position existed then.
right.
So we would start Stacy Mazer on the court and have Stacy Mazer, who was a middle attacker, but didn't take up as much space, So we would start her, and she would go right, and you guys would head into the middle. And it required teams to prepare for two totally different systems, because you could both hit the daylights out of a two ball. I know we ran backward slides to Lisa.
Yeah.
Nancy, did we ever do that to you in the middle?
Not many. I wasn't as good off of one foot, so we didn't do many of that. Most of mine were
Yeah.
straight on approaches.
And both of you, we ran back shoot sets too on the right side. We had a regular 5, but also in system. And Nancy, we played you at middle back to take advantage of you hitting the pipe. I don't know that we have ever had two players. The only other person might have been Allison Weston, who was a great middle, but had the ability to drop back and pass and hit outside. So it was really wonderful. Talk about Tom Vanden Bosch, your high school coach, and the impact he had on your development, both of you. Nancy?
Well, like I said, when I came into high school, I was super raw. And I had a family friend who would joke with me. She'd say, you'd go up and hit the ball and just pray because you had no idea where it was going. And she wasn't that far off. Like I didn't feel like I didn't know where it was going, but it never actually went where I wanted it to a lot of the time. And so I thought Coach Vanden Bosch was instrumental because he was really good at teaching the game. He was really patient. He was more soft-spoken, but he kind of allowed me as a player to kind of figure out what I was doing and help me along that path. And he didn't get frustrated when I would hit the ball that would sail, 30 yards long and hit the back wall. And he would just kind of laugh it off. And I can remember in games when we'd be getting ready to serve and he would look at me and instead of giving me a location signal, instead of saying like serve zone 5 or serve zone 1, he would just look at me and cross his fingers. And that was a symbol for please just get it in. And so I feel like his personality really helped for me because I was so unpolished and I literally had no clue what I was doing, just kind of trying to be an athlete and figuring out as I went. And so he was really good with the patience of kind of helping me figure that out and start to develop.
And did you play you played some club volleyball, didn't you, Nancy?
I played some. I played for a couple of years for a club called the University of Okoboji, which incidentally was the same one Lisa played for.
And
Yep, it was kind of started by a bunch of dads for us. It was kind of like a Northwest Iowa all-star team is what it was. And they just put it together. We practiced maybe once, maybe twice a week from, kind of small schools around the area. And it was actually just a lot of fun. So yeah, we ended up having like several athletes that went D1, D2 off of that team. That was just kind of a throw together team. So it was pretty fun.
Lisa, were you recruited in basketball as well?
Yeah, I would say I was actually probably a better basketball player overall, but my heart was always kind of set on volleyball. But I would say I wasn't real serious about any kind of basketball recruiting, so I never looked into it too much.
Right.
What about you, Nancy? You were a really good basketball player too.
Kind of the same. I got some recruited, but I feel like I had a higher ceiling with volleyball, and I'm obviously extremely competitive. Jason will tell you that. And so I felt like it was more of a challenge for me to see how far can I get in volleyball? How much can I improve? How much room is there to grow? So it was kind of the same. I didn't ever take the basketball recruiting very seriously. My consideration would have been if I stayed in Northwest Iowa and went to one of the small schools like Dort or Northwestern that we were talking about. I considered going as a multi-sport athlete to something like that. But beyond that, I thought if I'm going to do volleyball at a higher level, like I want to be serious, I want to be focused on it, and I really want to challenge myself and see how much room there is to grow.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny when Nancy was talking about her coming into Nebraska her freshman year. I felt very much the same because I walked in. I'm a lefty with a right-hander's approach. I'm a right side player, but I can't set the ball. Like, I think everybody in that gym was like, "Who is this girl and why is she here?" Well, I had a lot of training. I think Val Novak, we had a love-hate relationship because I worked before and after every single practice with her. Like she did a lot for me.
Yeah. Well, I think was Todd Rosh an assistant coach ever for you, Lisa?
In 95, right? Yeah.
And I like to pair him off. He was left-handed. This is something that I suggest to coaches today. The tendency is they want to go out and fix all weaknesses. My philosophy is more which player has the most upside, and let's put a lot of energy into that player. Because if you watch teams that have great success toward the end of the season, it's usually because somebody develops. And that was certainly true with both of you. You also both carried teams in transition years. Lisa, in 1996, year after the national championship, we lose Billy Winsett, who's NCAA Woman of the Year, Allison Weston, who is co-MVP, Christy Johnson, who never lost an away match. Jen McFadden is injured. Denise Kozel tears her ACL, and she was going to be a starting left side player. So we lose 5 starters. And basically, it was kind of like a circus the first half of the season. It was Lisa Reitsma and the 5 dwarfs. We were trying to figure out a way to win until the offense developed. And it did develop because we had other really good athletes. Megan Corver, Jenny Kropp, Kate Cernich returned, and we had a wonderful setter in Fiona Nepo. Nancy, you had a similar situation in '99. We had to run a system. John came back because he was going to be the head coach. And we had to get Gracia on the court because she was wonderful. She was a 6th rotation player and was going to be the setter the next year. So Nancy, we had these 2 great right side players that you do not want to sub out. And John and I spent a couple weeks thinking, how in the heck are we going to do this? Well, we ended up subbing the setters for the middle blockers. And again, you could only enter 3 times. We could do it because both Gracia and Nancy could middle block if one setter would stay in, and we ended up winning our last 14 matches, which I thought was kind of a foundation for Coach Cook taking that team in 2000 to the national championship. You both played for one setters. You both played for Fiona. Lisa, you played 1 year with Christy, and Nancy, you played 1 year for Gracia Lee. So you've got All-Americans out the door there. Gracia Lee was also National Player of the Year. Talk about the setters you played for, Lisa. You played for Christy and Fee.
Yeah, they were both amazing. Basically, you could just, say you want it here, it's there. And they were just phenomenal athletes. And I was watching some tape again of Fiona, and she's another one. She could do just about anything. And her defense was amazing. She could move, like crazy. And it was kind of funny because I actually played a lot of co-ed with my husband afterwards. And she actually came in and played a match with us one time. And they were in shock over how great she was, because literally, she's like, okay, tell me, what do you want? What do you want? Where do you want it? And it was like right there. And they were just amazed because they had never played with a setter like that. And I don't think people realize our setters were phenomenal. And that's how we were as good as we were because of those setters. So it's a lot of fun when you have setters like that.
Yeah,
I would agree. I think we had outstanding setters. And even I think beyond her setting capability for Fiona was her leadership ability. She was somebody who made you feel comfortable instantly. She made you feel like she believed in you. She had your back. Like, oh, you totally forgot to block the line, Nancy. Don't worry, I'll dig it. She was always there. And I feel like that made the transition a lot easier because she was able to take so much on her back. Like you said that she was commenting about how we could go so many places, but I felt like she was the one doing it all. And I was just trying to keep up. Where am I supposed to be? Okay, I'll go there. Okay, where now? And she was the one who's like, no, you're fine. Calm down. We got this. Her leadership, I think, is something that really stood out to me as well.
She had a great relationship with Coach Pettit too. I think she had him kind of wrapped around her finger. So that helped us all.
Well, she had a wonderful sense of humor. When she came on a recruiting visit, I'm going in to give a serious talk to the team. And I think before I could say anything, she said, "Nice socks, coach."
Yeah, because you asked her, you're like, "Fiona, do you think bad?" That's what she said.
Yeah.
And then we all just kind of died laughing. It was so funny. She just fit right in.
Well, if you look at statistics, there are 3 players that have led Nebraska in kills for a season. Lisa Reitsma is 1, Nancy Metcalf is 2, and guess who the third one is? Think think of the subject of this show.
Sarah Pavin.
Sarah Pavitt.
Sarah.
3 left-handed right side players. And she played a few years after Nancy, but at the time, we emphasized middle attack and our right side player. Our left sides were very good, but we were more concerned about their ability to pass and play defense and occasionally go off as some did. Nancy, when you got to professional volleyball, I think maybe in 2001 you started playing with the national team. Was the game the same then, or when did it start to evolve into less middle attack and more left side attack?
Well, I think it has definitely evolved. But one of the constants I think is that every team is never going to be in system all the time, and so they always need big pin hitters. But at the professional level, sometimes your passing can get really shady really fast, and so you need to have pin hitters that can put it away, and so that ends up transforming it into more of an outside oriented game. But you need to, for us at least, in the teams I've played on, it always helps so much to have pin hitters at both pins who could put the ball away, good pass or not. And so we spend a lot of time just working on hitting balls like that, because that could be a game changer in terms of if you have, 60% of your transition plays are out of system, you got to have pin hitters who can put it away too.
And it's definitely an advantage to have a left-handed right side attacker because
I think it is. And I think I have so much respect for the right-handers who play opposite, because I feel like that's such an awkward angle for them. Like Merritt Beeson at Nebraska right now, like she makes it look so easy. I don't think people realize how much of a strange angle and how awkward that can be for a right-hander to hit that ball because she makes it look so easy. But being left-handed, I feel like is definitely an advantage on the right side, because everything comes to you on your hitting side. You don't have to wait for it to cross you. You don't have to see the ball crossing your body while you're trying to also see the blockers. So it just makes everything easier, I think.
And you were both trained as 6 rotation players. Sometimes that doesn't happen today. They see that somebody can hit the ball as hard as you two, and they just say, "Well, we'll just train her to attack." But both of you were in passing rotations, and you were strong servers, and that had to be a benefit going into international play where you only have 6 subs, I would think.
Definitely, because they can't sub as much. And so for any player internationally, no matter what position it is, being able to play all the way around the court is a really valuable asset, because teams are also limited in how many outside players they can bring in to their team, depending on which league you're in. And so they might be very limited on which foreigners they're going to sign. And if you're a foreigner who can only play in the front row, they're probably less likely to go with you because they want more bang for their buck. They want somebody who can attack out of the back row, who can jump in and play defense, who can help with serving strength, that kind of stuff as well.
Mm-hmm. Lisa, you came back for a 5th year and played basketball. And I admire that for a couple of reasons. You weren't the star of the team. You had a different role than you had in volleyball. You could certainly run up and down the court well, and I think you led the team in blocks. What were the challenges as you transitioned from being a college athlete? I mean, and the reason I ask this, I played golf the other day with a young man who's been trying to make the satellite tours. And he said, "Man, the hardest thing is my identity as a golfer. When people come up, that's what they want to know." How hard was the transition for you from college sport?
It was a little hard, I'd say. It took me a couple years before I could actually come back and watch a game in person, because I wanted to be out on the court. So I think that was probably the hardest thing, just not being able to get out there and do it myself. And so it took a few years for me to actually go back and watch a game in person. But staying in the Nebraska, Lincoln area, it was several years people still knew who I was. So I don't know, it wasn't that hard for me, I guess. Then your life moves on and you get married and have kids. And so then it's not really that, big of a deal anymore. But it wasn't that hard for me, really. I was kind of ready to move on. And so, but like I said, it was hard to go watch for the first few years. Now I have
Well,
season tickets and I love going. So
well, you had the talent to play internationally. Why didn't you? Why didn't you want to pursue that option?
well, like you said, I my 5th year I ended up playing basketball. The summer before my senior year, I went and played with the national team for a few months. And it went okay. I don't know. I just didn't enjoy it that well. And I'm more of a homebody. I like to be with my friends, family, that type of thing. So, you know, props to Nancy because she was willing to go travel and be overseas and do all that. I don't know. I just really wasn't interested in that. Now, if you could do it today with all the technology and, FaceTime and all that, and being able to communicate with your family, it might be a different situation. I might be a little more apt to go try it, but I just don't think I was not ready for that. Not really
Well,
what it ready to leave.
plus you could go play in Omaha today.
Yeah, now they can just stay here. Well, nowadays they have so many opportunities. I'm so excited for
Right.
them. Do what's happening
Nancy,
to us.
uh, what year did you get married? What year did you and Jason marry?
So I redshirted my 4th year in 2000, and then we got married that spring break in 2001, and then I played my 5th year the fall of 2001. So I had already
So,
become Nancy Metcalf before I finished in college, which
uh,
actually helped a lot for going overseas.
okay. Uh, I can't imagine how difficult that is, though. I didn't realize. I now that you mention it, I remember it. But how difficult that is to start a marriage, and you're having to go overseas. And there was Jason with you all the time, or some of the time, or how did
So the
that
first
work?
few seasons, he came over with me for the whole season. We would make a contract with whatever team I was playing for, and we would put in there 4 airplane tickets instead of 2 because I want Jason to come with me. We need our own apartment. I can't live with somebody else because my husband will be here. And so we would kind of finagle the contracts a little bit to make it doable for us. After I think it was 2005, so maybe 4 seasons in is when we started doing the Scooters Coffee stuff. And so then he ended up being in Lincoln most of the time, and he would come out to visit a few times during the season, but he was more based out of Lincoln starting then. But the first few years he was with me the whole time, and honestly, it was great because Jason is also one of my biggest cheerleaders. And so coming in and being in a place where it's totally unfamiliar, you don't know the people, you don't know the team, and trying to get comfortable and kind of find your niche there. He was great to have there because he was always so supportive and encouraging, and he would see things that I could do better or do differently, not necessarily even from a volleyball standpoint, but just like team building type stuff. And he'd be like, "Hey, that girl, she looks like she's struggling. What's going on with her?" And so he was a really great asset to have overseas with me. And it was fun for him, I think, part of the time. And part of the time, I think he just got bored. I mean, he's a very driven person. He's an entrepreneur now. We do the Scooters Coffee Houses, but he's always been driven. And so I think being in a place where he didn't really have a purpose, beyond just being there for me kind of wore on him a little bit too. But he never made me feel like I was putting him out to have him along. Like it was a little bit kind of like an adventure too, because at that point we hadn't been married very long. So we got to go, my first few seasons were in Puerto Rico, which was a great transition place for us to go to. A lot of people down there speak English. We both had some Spanish background in school, so we could communicate pretty well with everybody we met. They use dollars. They don't use any other money. It's actually a USA area code, so phone calls are like calling in the United States anyway. We could talk to family back home really easily. So it was a really good transition for us. But then as I got to be playing in other places where the seasons would get longer and we would be further away, then sometimes he wasn't with me for the whole season. So there were definite challenges with that as well, was just trying to connect. He'd have a busy day here and I'd be overseas having a busy day doing something completely different. But if our times didn't match up when we could connect on the phone that night, we might not talk that day. And so that could be challenging as well.
Yeah, you played in Spain, Azerbaijan, Italy. Um, w- I have to think sometimes you might have been the only American on the team, or maybe there was only a couple. What was the most difficult or loneliest situation you ever faced as a professional player?
So I think for me, probably the loneliest or most difficult was actually my final season. Starting off, it was in Japan. And I had this preconceived idea that Japanese people are so well educated, so they're all going to speak, decent English at least, and we're going to be able to communicate pretty easily. I was playing for Toshi, who had been the head coach of the USA team, the Olympics I was in. So I knew the coach. And I walked into the gym the first day and the girls were all like, "Hi, Nancy." And I'm like, "Hi, how are you?" And they looked at me and they smiled. They're like, "Hi, how are you?" And that's all they knew how to say. And that was a huge awakening for me because I expected to be able to talk. I mean, I didn't think we could talk at this pace like we're doing, but I thought we would be able to converse with each other. And they literally didn't know how to answer it beyond, "Hi, how are you?" And they just sat there and looked at me and smiled. And so that was pretty lonely just to get used to it. I had a translator who the team hired solely to be a translator for me, but she lived in a city several hours away. She had older parents who needed her home every night. So as soon as practice ended, she was gone. Like she was taking off. She had to get on the train to get back to her house. And so it was like there wasn't really a whole lot I could do on my own in a city where nobody spoke English. So that was kind of a tough transition. But as the season went on, and this is kind of one of my favorite memories of it, it became one of my favorite places to play because I started to pick up on nuances of how the girls, their personalities were. I could figure out what they were joking about, even though I didn't know half of the words they were saying. So it ended up actually being one of my favorite places to play by the end of the season. But the beginning of that season was really rough. And I came home at Christmas. Most seasons, wherever I was playing, I could come home for Christmas. And I came home at Christmas that year and I told Jason, I was like, "This is awful. Like, I can't talk to the girls. I don't know what they're doing. I have nothing to do at night." And he was like, "Do you want to just tell them like you're done? Like, call it, you're done." I'm like, "No, I can't do that. Like, I signed a contract." And I think that goes back to what Lisa said about Northwest Iowa and just how we were raised. Like, I committed to that. I wasn't going to bail on them. That wasn't even an option. And
Right.
I'm so glad I didn't because when I went back for the second half of the season, it honestly was one of the best experiences of my life. And so I'm so glad that I stuck it out.
Well, yeah, that's wonderful. You both have 3 kids. Lisa's are a little older. Lisa, tell us about your kids and if they're involved in sport and whether or not you have considered or have coached them in any of their activities.
So my son is a junior. They all go to school in Milford, right outside of Lincoln. He plays football, basketball, track. He's a pretty good athlete. He's just now kind of growing into his body. He's 6'9". So he this last year he's grew a ton and he's kind of come into his own. Like I'm excited to see how this year goes. Football's going really well for him. He's had like 5 touchdown receptions. So I'm excited for him there. His team's doing really well. They're playing really well together. They're 4-0 for the first time in a couple of years. I think that's more wins than they've had in the last couple of years altogether. So we're excited for them. And basketball, I think, will be a great season too. And then my daughter, Shayla, is a freshman at Milford. She's playing varsity volleyball. So it's a big step for her. She kind of had a breakout year in club, I would say, this last year. So she's had a huge jump. She wants to say she's my height already. She's pretty close. Her wingspan is already bigger than mine, so I think she will be taller than me. I'm pretty sure. So she's excited about that. But she's learning a lot. She's still pretty raw too, but she's got a lot of potential. So I'm excited for her.
I saw on Facebook she was invited to Coach Cook's Dream Team Camp.
She was. She got an invite to that. So we were all pretty excited for her. I was also very nervous for her. I'm over here, worried mom, just hoping it all goes well. But it did. It went really well. So I'm excited for her. Like I said, I think she has a lot of potential, and I'm excited to see where that goes.
And then
Um,
Adler,
and then Adeline is my youngest. She's a 5th grader, and she's probably the biggest go-getter out of them all. She's watched them all these years, so she wants to do it herself. So she's probably going to be the shortest, but maybe the most athletic. I don't know. Things just come a little bit more naturally to her. So I'm excited for her as well. But yes, I've coached the girls in volleyball and basketball through their school teams or their little Y teams. And I'm doing a little bit with Nebraska 1 for Shayla or for Adeline's club team right now. But I'm ready to put the mom coaching aside and let the club coaches take over. Just kind of have that separation. I do what I can, but I'm ready to pass that over so they can learn from the best.
yeah, and that's wonderful. Nancy, your 3 are younger.
They are. So my oldest is Sophie. She's 9. She's a 4th grader. And she is in volleyball. She's in basketball. We try to get her to do pretty much any sport she wants to. because we feel like at that age, it's really good for them. It's really good developmentally, even just for athleticism and coordination. And so she's played soccer, she's done softball. She seems to like basketball and volleyball the best, but she is not, I would say she's not super into sports. She'll play and then she'll be done playing for a while and she's fine with that. And then our second is Sam, and he is a 7-year-old second grader. And he is more like what you're saying, Lisa, about Adeline. He loves sports. He always wants to play, whether you go outside and throw a football with him, you shoot baskets, you throw a baseball, you hit a golf ball. He wants to do it all the time. And my husband, Jason, has a background in basketball and football, and he loves to golf. So Sam is constantly, Dad, can we go to this? Can we go to this? And at some point, Jason is usually like, okay, Sam, we've been throwing a ball back and forth all day long. Like, we're going to take a break. And then Gabby is our youngest, and she just turned 5 this summer. And she is probably going to be the tallest of all the kids. When you look at growth curves and that kind of stuff, we thought Sophie and Sam were both really tall in terms of, comparison to other kids their age. And Gabby's numbers blow both of theirs out of the water. So her projection right now is 6'5". We'll see if that happens or not. But she loves to do everything, and she's the same way, where she's trying to keep up with Sophie and Sam constantly. And so she's constantly doing things that, for when I think of Sophie, like Sophie didn't really try even thinking about shooting a basketball for several years. Well, Gabby's been doing it already for 3 years because she's watched Sam do it or she's watched Sophie do it. And so I think she's picked up on stuff really quickly, which is usually typical for a third kid. Jason coaches basketball for both our kids, and I'm coaching Sophie's volleyball team. So I don't know. It's fun for me to be able to coach and try to figure out how to like break down stuff that I know I want them to do, but how do you break it down into a way that a 9-year-old can understand and grasp the concept and make that change? So it's been challenging, but it has been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But you also have a lefty, right?
Well,
One of your kids is a
so
lefty?
Sophie, I thought,
Oh.
Sophie does everything left-handed. She writes left-handed, she eats left-handed, she throws right-handed. And so we were honestly like, I was kind of bummed. I'm like, man, I wanted my left-hander. And Gabby so far is the same. She eats left-handed. She writes with her left hand, but we're not sure yet on throwing because she kind of just picks up a ball in whatever hand it happens to be in. She throws it. So I'm thinking of tying her right hand behind her back and be like, no, you have to be a lefty. But we'll see.
Yeah. It's funny that you say that because I used to throw right-handed and I just did it because there were gloves around. So I'm like, okay, I'll just throw and play as a right-hander. So that's what I did.
Right. Well, and I swing like a golf club or a baseball bat. I swing right-handed, and I'm convinced it's because when we were growing up, we did summer rec softball. The coaches were these high school kids are like, here's where you stand, here's which direction you face, here's how you swing. And we all did it the same. Because if I try to swing left-handed, swinging an object, it feels so awkward to me. But I do everything else left-handed, so who knows?
Yeah. How much of an impact, not just Nebraska volleyball, both of you played in the Coliseum with wonderful crowds. Your teams were successful, but the other thing you gained was a network of close people that went through that experience with you. And women didn't have that opportunity prior to the early 1970s to Title IX. But how much has your experience at Nebraska impacted your life? Nancy, we'll go with you first here.
I think it's had an immeasurable impact on my life, down to the very basics of giving me the belief that I could do something at this level. If it wasn't for Nebraska, I would have probably played at a small town in Northwest Iowa at a small school there, and I probably would have stayed there and lived there the rest of my life. And the doors that it's opened and the opportunities that it's presented they're not even measurable. I mean, I've been all around the world, and I directly attribute that to the training and the stuff I received at Nebraska when I was playing there. But then also in other terms, just in terms of like you talked about the network and the people we've gotten to know and the opportunities we've had to be in different things and to be a part of different things that I think all lead back to being at Nebraska. But the way also I think that the coaches at Nebraska shape the women there who are athletes and shape how they see themselves and how they think about life moving forward and decisions they're making and the teaching stuff that happens. I mean, all of it, I think, comes from being at Nebraska. So I am incredibly grateful for having had the opportunity to play at Nebraska.
The Alumni Association should hire you to give presentation. Lisa, how about you?
Yeah, same thing. I'm just very appreciative for everything I've gotten out of it, both on the court and just off the court. friendships, the coaches. It's kind of funny. We go back and forth. We have an actual text group that goes on. Nancy's in it, of all the people around our area talking during every game and about why is Cook doing this? What's going on here? What's and so it's pretty fun. We have pretty good relationships, and I don't know if a lot of teams have that, and so I just cherish that as well because we're all really close friends. And I've heard of other girls' siblings even that have gone to bigger schools and they don't even talk to them anymore, which to me is just, I couldn't even imagine that part of it because I just grown to love these ladies and these you as coaches. So I just love the relationships that we formed as well. So,
this is Coach Cook and his staff have a wonderful team moving forward here. And I'm sure you've probably seen them live sometimes, and if not on television. What do you think about this team? There's a lot to like. A wonderful setter. There is a great athlete at every position. If you were going to send a little note to Coach Cook, an anonymous note, and say, "I'd like to see this," what would there be anything?
Keep setting the middles. I love our middles. They're just so fun. And I just love this team in general. They just look like they're having fun. The crowd loves them. I went to the Stanford match and the environment was just amazing. I think they've responded to that SMU loss, in a great way. They just come out there on all, cylinders, just firing and spreading it out. And I don't know, they're just really fun to watch. So I'm just excited to see how the rest of the year goes for them. And I think they've turned their serving around as well. That was a huge key, I think. Their serving went from being not the best to now it's like Krause. I mean, they're on fire. I'm excited to see where this is going to go.
Good. Nancy?
I would agree. I love watching this team. And I've commented to several people who have asked, I said that the players that come into the program now are so skilled already before they step foot on the court as a Husker. It's impressive. I feel like they're more skilled as freshmen than I was as a senior. It's just a leaps and bounds better. But I agree. I think keep spreading it out on the offense. I love it when they set the middle because their middles are so dynamic. They are so aggressive and they're up there and they're very physical. They're very athletic. But I also think I would just encourage him to continue trusting his team and just enjoying it, because I can tell when he's stressed, he looks different than when he's enjoying it. And I think the players feed off of that as well. And this team plays with so much heart. You can tell they love each other. They're playing for each other. That when they feel that confidence coming from Coach Cook, and I think back to when we were playing, when we could feel confidence coming from our coaches, it really impacts how you feel as a player on the court. And I think he can help kind of guide this team to enjoy the process, and that will lead to better results for them as well, I think.
Well, Nancy,
I was going to say, I've seen him cheer and celebrate a little bit more on the bench than I have in the past. So I think he's getting into it. And then I've seen his little TikToks. I think he's having a lot of fun with it. So that's been fun too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sometimes coaches don't realize that we're all in a play and the coaches have a role too. And they may not emotionally feel like being welcoming or their posture on the bench or so forth. But they have to commit to that because it's the best. It's the thing the team needs the most. I can't tell you how much I appreciate what you have given to Nebraska volleyball and the impact the two of you've had. And man, I love talent. And you could be so creative when you have athletes like the two of you, because you can build a whole system around the versatility of those players. You're wonderful people. You came from great families with a lot of character. I also want to thank David Young, our producer, and Human X Ventures. Without Human X Ventures, we don't get to meet and do this. So we'll look forward to seeing everybody next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Coach.
Inside the Coaching Mind is presented by Human X Ventures and is pleased to be a part of the Learfield Varsity Podcast Network. If you're on Facebook, look for the Inside the Coaching Mind group and join a vibrant discussion of volleyball and leadership. TerryPettit.com is where you'll find Terry's books, writings, and downloads, as well as subscription links for all your podcast apps.